talk about the launch of the Chan Zuckerberg Education Initiative this morning and our new leader, Jim Shelton, who's joining us to lead all of the education initiative. So before we get to that, it's Teacher Appreciation Week, and I think it would be awesome to just start off talking about some of the teachers who have made a big impact on our life. And before we get to that, I just want to say this is the first live that I have ever done with my wife, Priscilla. And depending on how this goes, it may be the last live we ever do together.
You can't take back anything you say on this.
So all right, I'll try to be careful. But as always with these lives, what makes it awesome is participation from folks all around the world. So just write in with any questions you have for me and Priscilla and Jim when he joins in a couple of minutes. And we hope to have this be a good interactive conversation about the education work that we're trying to empower teachers to do all around the world. So Teacher Appreciation Week.
Yeah, let's see. Teachers, this is an easy one for me because teachers have been so important in my life. Growing up in a small community outside of Boston, and my parents hadn't gone to college, teachers were the first people who opened my eyes to the rest of the world and what was possible in the world and what was possible for me. And there's two teachers in high school that I always remember really fondly. One being they're both science teachers, and that and alone had a big impact in my life. But one was my tennis coach and one was my robotics coach. And they really helped show me what I was capable of and paved the way for me to go to college. And so that was completely transformative. And if it wasn't for Mr. Long and Mr. Swanson, I wouldn't be where I was. But more recently, I've been thinking about teachers in my professional career. And I just finished residency, a pediatrics residency, a couple months ago. And Meg McNamara was one of my preceptors, and she taught me a lot of medicine, but she also taught me how to listen and how to walk in the shoes of the families that I take care of. And that, I think, professionally and how I approach families and how I approach children and learning and development she's really made a big mark on me. So those are my three teachers. What about you?
Probably the person who comes to mind most for me is Mr. Fung, my math teacher in high school. And I always really liked math, but he made it feel like a community, right? Of just a handful of people who loved math, and he was not only super encouraging about what we were doing in the classroom, but he coached us to be this really competitive math team, which plays to my personality and the way that that I love doing stuff. But he really gave us personalized attention, and it taught me about the way that I think about things and the way that I process problems. And everyone thinks about stuff a little bit differently. And when I'm looking at a problem, it's I try to think about like what the space of the answer might be and estimate things, and in order to try to get closer and closer to what the answer would be. And I didn't understand that about myself. And he really paid a lot of attention to how every student in the class studied and worked on these different problems, and really helped me and pushed me forward in a way that touched me not just in the way that I approach math and academics, but in everything I've done since then, in computer programming and engineering and building a company. And it's, you always say that one really amazing teacher has such an influence and an impact on your life and changing the way you think. And in this case, I really think that that's true. And the way that he changed the way that I think has really stayed with me my whole life so far.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to talk about the Chan Zuckerberg Education Initiative?
Yeah, let's do it.
So maybe we should get started by talking about how we got started with Chan Zuckerberg Initiative overall, which we announced last December when our baby daughter Max was born. Do you want to talk about this for a second?
Yeah. Well, it was a long journey to get to the moment where Max was about to come into the world. And when we were getting ready for her to arrive, we started thinking about how we were going to raise Max and what kind of world we wanted her to live in and how we wanted our family to be part of creating that future. And so that's when we started talking to each other about what are our values, what are our hopes and dreams, and how could we actually be a part of that, and given that we're just so lucky to have the opportunity.
Yeah, and I think we really have this belief that our children's lives should be able to be so much better than ours, right? Children all over the world, right? If you think about the pace that science and technology are accelerating and can improve the quality of our life, and if you think about the benefits that we're getting from a more connected world and being able to have a global community and economy where kind of everyone can participate in that, there's really no reason why if we make the right investments now as a society, our children should be able to have much, much better lives than we were able to growing up, and all children around the world. So that's what we're trying to do with the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative overall. We wanted to get started earlier in our lives. I think the traditional way that people think about philanthropy is you have your career, and then at the end maybe you think about giving back. And we had this attitude that just like anything that we do, right, the schools that you're building, or Facebook, which I spend all my time building, if we want to get good at helping teachers improve education, or helping scientists cure diseases, or helping people build communities, that's something that takes practice too. So we don't just want to wake up 30 years from now and decide that we want to get started on it. It's something that we decide that we need to practice at and start when we're younger and start investing now. So that's what the Chan Zuckerberg Education Initiative is about that approach in education. And we're going to do work in a number of other fields, in science and health and climate change and other areas as well. But today what we're really excited to talk about is this education initiative, which has a focus on two primary areas: personalized learning, making it so that every student can learn in the way that fits them best and that they process things and at the speed that they learn. And the other is focused on underserved communities, because there are a lot of different barriers that people have to being able to learn that are outside the classroom as well as inside it. Right? If you don't have the proper nurturing and health, or if you feel unsafe, or if any number of things are wrong in your community, then it can be hard to have the conditions to learn right, to learn as well as you can and to reach your full potential. So those are the two big focus areas for us: are personalized learning and underserved communities. It's probably worth talking a little bit about just the work that you do. I mean, in terms of building schools and...
Yeah, let's just taking a step back, like, why is education so important to us? And this education clearly has been the first thing we've invested in. Education is our first large initiative through the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. Why education? And I already started talking about the kernel of why this was so important, in that my life was changed by a couple of really talented and caring educators that allowed me to unlock a few doors that led me all the way to being able to become a pediatrician. And without those individuals, those teachers, this wouldn't be possible. And one of our core tenets of the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative is that we believe that every individual has an incredible amount of potential that may not be able to be manifest because of various conditions or circumstances. And we want to use education as a way of unlocking human potential and allowing every individual to live to their fullest being and being able to give back to society and contribute in a way that's meaningful and rewarding to them. So education is a very natural place for us to start. For me, once I got to high school, I realized college, I realized how lucky I was in that it was left to just random chance. I might not have been where I was freshman year in college. And so I started thinking about how to give back, and really the early belief that there's so much potential in young children that I could be part of unleashing. And so I always knew I wanted to work with kids. I spent 4 years in college teaching an after-school program to kids in a low-income housing community to really think about how they could be better empowered to do well in the classroom. And I realized it was complicated. There was a lot of stuff going on. There was a lot of health issues. And so I took a 10-year journey, maybe detour, to becoming a pediatrician and being able to really think about health and the well-being and development of a child from a really high, a broader perspective. And from there I saw that kids had a lot of stuff going on, from their health, their attention, their behavior, their homes, that made it more difficult for them to be fully present and able to learn in their seats. And so it's circled back to this core belief that we really need to invest in education, and that every family, every child has a different circumstance that needs to be considered. We need to personalize how we approach teaching, personalize how we approach their support, so that each child has an opportunity to reach their fullest potential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you've done so many different things in education and health over the last 10 years that, at some point when we were doing this work together, I would always tell people your stories from the different work that you'd done. And then one day you turned to me and it just said, you have to go teach some students yourself. You have to get your own stories.
Yeah, and it was unreasonable.
Stop telling my stories. So, I thought that was great advice, right? Because I think it's really hard to help teachers do this work if you don't have firsthand experience being a teacher in a classroom, and trying to have that experience. So, at Priscilla's recommendation, I taught an after-school program for a while. I mean, to be fair, I'm running this company, so it's a little bit hard for me to take enough time off. Being a teacher takes a lot of time, right? And running an after-school program was hard enough for me. But it was one of the most rewarding experiences for me that has also similarly shaped the way that I think about this.
And that's how we got to doing SAT prep questions last weekend. They weren't for Max. We were
helping our students.
Helping our students, and good luck to everyone taking the SATs this weekend.
So you want to talk for a minute about personalized learning, and then we should have Jim join us, because that's the whole reason why we're here today. But so personalized learning, one of the reasons why we're really excited about this is that there's very clear data that when a student has a very personalized approach to their education, where the most personalized approach is you have a one-to-one tutor, right, or mentor that you're spending your time with, then the education results are just significantly better than when you're in a classroom learning at the same pace as all the other students in the same way as everyone else who's there. So what we really want to do and strive to help teachers do over the next 10 or 20 years is get to the point where every student in every classroom can have the same kind of education that you would have if you were working with a one-on-one tutor. And the reality is every student learns a little bit differently. Some people like working in groups. Some people like reading on their own, or doing practice problems, or playing learning games. Some people like talking to teachers. Some people just like working on their own. And then, people work at their own pace, right? So in every classroom, there are going to be students who grasp a concept really quickly, and in the time that they're now waiting for other students to understand that, they could have been learning more and getting ahead in different areas. And then at the same time, there are students who, a concept may be particularly hard for them, where if they only have the same amount of time as everyone else to learn that, then they might get left behind and miss some foundational step, which is necessary to understand later concepts, and get left behind after that. Mm-hmm. So, we're working on a whole number of things. One of the reason why we're here at Summit Public Schools today is that Summit has one of the most amazing personalized learning models that we've seen. And we, through one of the precursor organizations to the Zuckerberg Education Organization, have invested very meaningfully in helping to scale Summit, invest in teachers, invest in training around teaching. And we're also doing work to help build technology for wherever it's helpful to help teachers teach students in this personalized way. So there's a lot more to do here, and this is one of the big areas that we're focused on and very excited to talk about. So do you want to talk about underserved communities, or do you feel like we've hit on that enough, and do we want to go straight to?
Let's get Jim in this.
All right. So Jim, we were very excited to have Jim join. Jim, you want to join us for a second, and then I'll embarrass you with my intro while you're sitting here.
Oh, thanks.
Welcome.
Appreciate it.
So Jim just has the perfect background and passion for what we're doing. If you set out and you were trying to find an education leader whose two primary passions were personalized learning and serving in underserved communities, and who had the background and experience in all of the relevant ways that you would want to try to help teachers and students, right? So working in government, right, as Deputy Secretary of the Department of Education, working in philanthropy. You spent 6 years helping to lead.
This really is getting embarrassing.
It's important that all the folks in the community who are watching this understand where you're coming from in the experience. But you spent 6 years helping to lead all the education efforts of the Gates Foundation, right? Which the Gateses are really important mentors to us and our thinking on all this work as well. And of course, not only working in government and nonprofits, but you've most recently come from helping to lead a company as president of a public company working in education technology. So all these different areas, and when you ask Jim, what are the things that you care about? It's so aligned with what we're focused on here around personalized learning and underserved communities. So welcome. We're really excited to support you in doing this work, and I think a lot of teachers and students are going to benefit from having you on board here.
Well, thanks a lot. I'm super. I can't even express how excited I am to be here. What an incredible opportunity this is, and how much impact I hope we have, and believe we're going to have. So thank you for welcoming me. I really appreciate it.
So it's a big day for us. You're here with us in California now, and so tell us. The interview's over. Tell us a little bit about why you've decided to join us and what you hope to achieve.
Sure. Can I do two quick things?
Yeah.
One, I want to give a shout out to the two teachers that I really think helped shape my life. So one is a woman who's my fourth grade teacher. Her name is Miss Vogley. And the reason Miss Vogley was important to me is because I just knew I couldn't draw. I just knew I couldn't draw, and I had this assignment, and I had to draw a horse. And I started it, and it looked terrible, and I shut down. And she completely convinced me that I was going to be able to draw this, a very elaborate picture of a horse, and coach me through it, and I did. And it was literally at that moment, and she said to me something I don't know if she ever knew exactly how much it impacted me is, I promise you there is nothing you can't do with time, attention, and effort. And for the rest of my life, that has been an ongoing philosophy. And then the second thing that person who touched me was Dr. Marcellus Barksdale, who's my professor at Morehouse. And I had had a great education in high school, but had felt like I had not ever really fully reached my potential. And he was my history professor, and I remember him writing at the bottom of one of my exams, "You have the potential to be brilliant." And it sounds like a very simple thing, but I never had anyone to say it to me that directly. And then I worked with him, and I felt like I exploded after that. So just wanted to call those couple of people out. One of the reasons that I'm excited to be here is that what has been clear to me since meeting you two is that this work is personal and passionate for you. That we are not only aligned on what we think about what the big strategies may be, but about why it's important and about the ability, literally the belief again, to be able to change people's lives. That you start off by saying something as big as, we can actually help kids learn 100 times as much. The first question is always, what do you believe? Mm-hmm. And so starting with that big, bold vision is important. But then recognizing, as you said, that's complicated.
Yeah.
That one of the things that stifles us in the education space is people always want to talk about either or. Mm-hmm. And so much of this work is about and both. It is about both great and high quality instruction in lots of different ways of helping kids learn and helping teachers be better teachers and more effective with the kids they serve. But it's also about recognizing the other factors that kids bring into the classroom. and helping them to mitigate those things so they can really be their best learners, and helping teachers understand how to see those things and support kids in doing so. I know so many teachers, they get into this work and they have incredible aspirations for what they want to do with their children, and the reality of being in front of a classroom with 30 to 35 children with a whole variety of needs, learning at different rates and at different levels when they start, and then not being given a whole lot of tools and support to be successful in doing what they set out to do. And it always is surprising. People wonder why turnover in teaching is so high when it is such an incredibly important, yet such an incredibly difficult job where we put very few resources against helping people figure out how to be their very best.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about being able to do all of that, both to help the students and to be able to help the teachers and to frankly unlock the potential that's going to help us change the world.
So what are the biggest lessons that you feel like you've learned from all of the various experiences that you've had that you think we need to bring towards this work?
So there's so many, but the thing that I'm relieved about is that the lessons that I think are most important to me are ones that you've kind of stated up front is kind of core to you. Humility, the need to recognize what you don't know, and the need to listen to the people that you're going to be touching most, and the need to not only listen to them, but to work with them to come up with solutions that are going to really change lives. That, I think, is pretty fundamental. But then, you both come at it with, frankly, scientific backgrounds, recognizing that there are things that science can tell us about how to make things better, that technology has actually changed the world in almost every other sector except ours. It's starting to happen. I mean, I spent the last year with an education technology company, 2U, where I had a fantastic experience looking at higher education, which everyone says is very slow to change. But what is starting to happen is people recognize it's a very different way to do things, and at a level of quality no one ever thought that you would associate with online education. So we have to just remember what's possible, and bringing rigor to it, and bringing technology to it, and bringing boldness to it is really exciting to me.
Interesting. So why are you excited about personalized learning?
So, I mean, you talked a little bit about it. For me, there's the part that's common sense, which is, the worst thing you want to hear if you've ever been in a classroom, and I'm sure you've either been next to a student, maybe even been the student, or hopefully it didn't happen in your classroom, where the student says, "What am I ever going to use this for?"
Yeah, all the time.
or you can look in the class and you see that there are some kids that have got it, they're fully engaged. You see some kids that look like they're kind of wrestling with it, and then you look in another section and they're just checked out on you.
Yeah.
And what we recognize is that the common sense thing is, if you're going to actually reach each child, if you're going to fulfill the thing that we ask teachers to do every day and differentiate instruction, then differentiation is not really about reaching individual groups, it's about reaching each and every child. So that's the personal common sense piece to it if you've ever been in the classroom. The part that is tied to the science piece is, there's this thing called the Bloom's two-standard deviation problem, right? And that is what you talked about, saying that one-to-one tutoring has been shown over and over and over again to be much more impactful than regular classroom instruction. And so you ask yourself, well, we know this actually works for kids, why don't we do it? Well, it's extraordinarily expensive. And where do you find all the people? And so the question becomes, how do you take the tools and resources and experiences of our teachers, use all of the students that are in the classroom, and use every other resource possible to help students be able to drive their own learning and tap into their passions and their sense of purpose, and help teachers facilitate that process and have better tools for actually meeting them where they are and getting them where they need to go.
Yeah. And do you want to talk for a second about your focus on underserved communities? Because in our conversations, this has just been something that you're so passionate about, right? And I think share our feeling that this is such an important thing to do for the world and our communities. So I think it would be powerful to hear you talk about this for a second.
I mean, for me, like so many things, it has different parts to it. There's a part for me which is personal, which is that I grew up in D.C. and had the opportunity to live and work around people who worked really hard. But the context in which they lived, whether it was their school setting, whether it was a neighborhood, meant that their life took a very different turn than mine. A lot of my friends, that's what happened, and it wasn't until I'm on a bonding with a set of my friends in a school environment and frankly in a community where we were shielded from a lot of that I was able to excel. And I want to find ways to tap into all the kids in our neighborhood that I know were a lot smarter than I am, to figure out how we get their potential and their talent applied to all the problems that we face as a country, and to realize all the opportunities that are left in the world. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we recognize when we look at the data that it's very clear that right now where you live is very much a determinant of how well you're going to do in school. You might be a very hardworking student, and you still are not going to do as well as students who are better off in other communities who may not be working as hard just because of access to resources and less trauma and adversity in their lives. And so if we really want a world that is about merit and equality and equity, then you really have to start to say, what are we going to do to mitigate those barriers to learning and to those kids reaching their full potential? And then you're talking about a world where you can have conversations about equality because you created an equitable platform for opportunity.
Yeah. All right, so I have a lot of questions that I could ask you, but we probably have some questions on the live that we should go to. So let's scan this now and see what people are asking about. So it looks like, so here's one question. I apologize if I mispronounce this name, but Kave. Would this initiative benefit children from other countries as well, like China or South America?
So that's one of the things I didn't say that was exciting to me is the idea that you actually have a global perspective and you are very interested in going outside the U.S. with the work. I'm excited about it, and so definitely this work will benefit children all over the world.
Yeah, and we've actually made a few investments already. For example, there's this network of schools, Bridge International Academy, where I think that they have, it's a few hundred schools at this point, right? And I think it's in Kenya and a number of other countries. I know that they're spreading quickly.
Correct.
I don't want to speak out of turn if they haven't announced some of those yet, but and the results are really amazing, right? I mean, they have this method for teaching students where they were basically they train the teachers to use technology and therefore can deliver a much higher quality education than a lot of the other schools in some of these neighborhoods. And I think in some of the areas they're getting results that are a standard deviation on above what the regular average schools are creating. And we're very excited about that kind of work. So that's good education entrepreneurship. We're proud to support them. We'll be looking to do more in Africa, in South America, and in Asia, like you're talking about here, as well as in the U.S. Now, there is an element here where one of the things that we've learned is that focusing in our community here helps us engage with parents and teachers, and that's really helpful. So we're still very early in our journey to learn about this, and that is one thing that we feel like we can still do in the Bay Area, in California, in the United States. That's a little bit harder for us to do internationally, which is why we probably focus a bit more here than you would expect for an organization that's going to be focused so globally. But over time, we're definitely going to see us do more in all these places. All right. Let's take another question. So, Ian, how are you going to promote computer science in public schools?
We get that one often. I think. Well, actually, I'll let you answer this one, Jim.
Well, I mean, you all have already done some small investments over time in supporting computer science in schools and recognizing that computer science plays a role that actually cross-cuts the kind of competencies and skills it builds in kids as they're thinking about it. So what I would say is that clearly there's an opportunity to continue to build on the work that's happening in schools. The President's Initiative around computer science means that there's going to be a lot of work. The question is, how do we actually help many more kids access that computer science opportunity by tapping into where they are, finding out if it's a passion for them, and helping them excel in it.
And it's a problem we have to solve for a lot of schools. It's not just how you teach it in the classroom. There's a lot of core infrastructure that needs to be in place for kids to really be able to use and manipulate technology and learn how to code while in school. And so we've actually started to pave the way by investing in groups like Education Superhighway, where we're bringing high quality broadband to schools so that they can get connected and kids can start getting exposed to technology, becoming literate and quite adept at computers and computer science.
Yeah, that's really important, and that's been a big investment for us because it's tough to learn computer science if you can't access the internet in schools. Another big one that we're focused on is code.org, which is more of a policy initiative, but I think it underscores how important parents are in all of this work, right? Because what code.org is doing is essentially creating a movement around parents and teachers and different folks demanding that computer science be taught in schools. So one approach that we can take is to help fund equipment and help fund teachers to be able to do different things in schools, like we're trying to do with Education Superhighway. Another area that we're going to try to be active and help out is in areas like code.org, where it's really parents and this broad movement that are coming together to demand that computer science gets taught. And I think that will ultimately have a big impact as well.
That's actually, when you talk about the things that are exciting about this opportunity, you all's openness to saying, look, it's going to take infrastructure to get work done. It's going to take folks who have really great programs for teaching computer science. It's going to take a policy context that is actually supportive of doing this kind of work, and we're willing to invest as needed in these different areas in order to enable the whole thing. That is something that lots of people could do and not many people do. And so that kind of flexibility and willingness to lean in is actually one of the other things that's really exciting, using all the tools available.
Yeah. All right, so a question from Nicole. How do you move forward on inclusive programming that includes the early years?
This is a really important one for me, and I know important for you too, Jim. Someone who taught elementary school and after-school program and then now a pediatrician, I just see a number of needs that kids have: health, parental support, schooling, that's arbitrarily siloed. And then for school, we have like sort of 0 to 2, early education, and then the K-12 system, and then beyond. And those divisions are arbitrary and created by the systems, and what we hope to do is actually be able to step back and think holistically about a child. What do they need to succeed, and how can we actually work with all these systems to knit together to something that's family-centric and child-centric. And that's exactly what I'm doing at the primary school, looking at how we can get a health organization, a school, parent support woven together that meets the family's needs, empowers the teacher, and allows the child to have everything that he or she needs to succeed in the classroom. So that's something that's really personally important to us. I'm building the primary school in a way that's hopefully replicable and scalable to other communities. But I know early childhood is something that's really important to you too, Jim, as well, because you see it as an early investment that pays off manyfold down the line.
Yeah, I mean, it's really clear that when you make that early investment in early childhood and you then follow it up with a continued investment over time, especially when you take into consideration all the needs of kids, then you can really see the benefits. So we talk about creating equitable opportunity. Starting it early for kids is really important. And the other thing is when people think about education initiatives, they often think about the academic subjects. But what we know is, like from the work of folks like Pam Cantor and the building blocks, is that there are all these competencies and skills besides that around your executive function skills, around persistence, and all of those things that you need to learn to do to be a great learner and, frankly, a great performer over time in your life are things that can actually be taught very well early in the early years. And set the foundation for the rest of our kids' life.
And passion and excitement, like
that too. Whether it is helping kids understand what it is to be excited while you're learning. The good news is they don't have to be taught that. You just have to not shut it down. And then the other part of it is that when you help kids discover very early on if they do have special learning needs. So doing those screenings early, doing those kind of things that lets you know, hey, there's something different that we need to figure out how to address pretty quickly. And over again, we're seeing that if you actually identify early, you intervene early, you can actually make dramatic progress and help kids excel.
All right, so we'll probably take a couple more questions from the thread and the community. This has been awesome so far, so thank you guys all for tuning in. From Fun Sun, personalized learning is a big subject, and so is education technology. So where do you plan to start? So I think this one is a good question for Jim. So where do you plan to start, Jim?
I tell you, where I really plan to start is to start by doing a lot of listening and learning. There are a lot of people that are doing great work around the country. We're here at Summit today. They're doing fantastic work here. There are folks outside the U.S. that I'm aware of that are doing really great work in personalized learning and doing really interesting applications of education technology, and talk about infrastructure issues. In many countries around the world, the infrastructure issues are significant, much greater than the ones that we face here today. So I want to do a bunch of learning about that. But at the same time, the reality is that you all have a great portfolio, both in the nonprofit side and on the, and through Zuckerberg Education Ventures, of organizations and companies that have started to do this work. So we'll start by building on the things that we've done already and supporting and learning from our current grantees. We'll look at what else is going on in the world to make sure we've been really thoughtful about it. And then we know that with some of the tools we want to take advantage of, we know that the research and development space and science is a place that there's a great amount of activity that's not really been coalesced in a way that actually benefits the field right now.
Yep.
And so figuring out how to quickly tap into that, and then figuring out how to find those best ideas that are working today and help them figure out quickly what's working well, what's not, and if they can scale, help them scale, or move on to a new idea.
Yeah, so there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Tons.
So there's schools like Summit Public Schools that are great models that are working that we want to help scale. There are new education entrepreneurs and teachers who want to explore new models, who want to fund to explore those. And then there's this emerging field of learning science that you talk about so much, and that we want to be able to fund to be able to push the state of the art on how learning can work in some new models. That way one day people can start new schools around them. So a lot of fun stuff to do. This is going to be a long-term project. All right, so we have one more question. I think this one is actually the most liked question in the live so far.
Very
so
serious,
it's from
too.
Yeah, it is. It's so from Mike. So what was your worst subject in school, and what was hardest for you? And did you have a teacher in that subject that made it better for you, or more eager to work harder? And also, Beast's hair is awesome. Mike,
That's a statement, not a question.
yeah, no, Mike, we agree. I think probably about half the reason why you get a poolie is for the hair, although his personality is awesome too. If you meet him, he's quite the crazy dog, but we love him. He's a great member of our family. All right, so worst subject. Who wants to start with this?
I think it's directed at you two.
I think you're in this one.
You know, I left that off. So
Yeah,
Mike's original question did originally say for Mark or Priscilla, but I figured I'd leave that off so that way I could also hear what Jim's worst subject was in school.
We're getting to know each other.
No worries. Okay, so my worst subject in school was I had to take Latin, and yeah, it was not great. There was a lot of it's not a spoken language, so there was a lot of memorization that was asked of me, and it was definitely one where I had a hard time making that connection that I talked about what am I ever going to use this for. But I wound up actually having a teacher who helped me to understand this connection to so many other languages. It actually turned out not to be my Latin teacher, and Ms. Harding actually, and through that connection to how it would actually matter everywhere else, and some coaching on how you actually attack languages besides just conjugating lots and lots of verbs, I wound up learning it.
So that's interesting. So I loved my Latin class. This is another interesting example of a teacher who has a pretty profound impact on you. I had this teacher, Mr. Woolley, in freshman year, junior year of high school, and he made me love Latin so much that I actually went to a summer program to also study classical Greek.
Wow.
And I loved it so much that I was actually pretty convinced that when I went to Harvard that I was going to be a classics major. And I just never got there. I got stuck on the computer science and psychology path, and now we're here. But I mean, Mr. Woolley, I think really gave me this love for this, and so I didn't end up going down that path. But I was so excited about it that I got my younger sister into it. So my younger sister Donna actually did go on to become a classics PhD and is now a scholar in classics because of her love for it, which I think partially came from me just being so excited about it and talking about it all the time with her because of Mr. Woolley. So I don't know, worst subject in school.
Are you looking at me now?
Yeah, I'm looking at you.
Worst subject in school.
I
Okay.
skipped yours, but that's okay.
Yeah, we're getting back to him.
I'll
We'll
come
end
back
on-
at the
we'll
end. I'll
on
come
him.
back at the end.
Let's see. I remember in ninth grade English class, I had in my mind that I just didn't know anything about grammar. I probably didn't because I was in ninth grade. And I remember going to my teacher, Mr. Hamilton, and I was like, Mr. Hamilton, I'm not very good at grammar. And he's like, don't worry about it. And I was like, what? No, but I'm really concerned. I think I'm not, this is a weakness I have. Like, how can I do better? And he's like, you're fine. Just read this. Let's, like, whatever we were doing in the class. And, it was fun. It was just like we read, I think it was British literature. We read a bunch of fun books. We worked on different projects. We wrote. And then I was like, Mr. Hamilton, I'm still not really good at grammar. And he's like, no, you are now. And like, we had just done it. He was like, my focus on the fact that it was something that I couldn't do, which I don't even know where it came from.
Right.
Was he just sort of made me put that aside, and like we had he was so engaging that I learned all the things that I thought I had a mental block against without realizing it. Mm-hmm. There is another worse subject, and this comes up on a regular basis. I was never very good at music. And
that is true.
I didn't get it. I couldn't hear it. Which doesn't make sense because I speak Cantonese and it's a tonal language, but I think I'm a little bit tone deaf.
Yeah, so everyone on my side of the family has perfect pitch, and you are, I guess
also
tone deaf
think
is maybe
I have perfect
overstating
pitch.
it. Yeah, everyone thinks they have perfect pitch. But we have some rules about who can sing to Max, because we want to make sure that she grows up with good Zuckerberg pitch.
Okay.
So some of my deficits persist.
You just reminded me.
It's good. You have a great voice, though. So, language was always the hardest for me. We were talking about Latin a second ago, but part of the reason why I think I liked Latin so much is that you don't have to speak it, right? You don't have to listen, right? So, in my life, I have actually studied, I think, 7 languages, right? So English, a little bit of French, a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of Hebrew growing up, Latin, Greek, and now Mandarin. And part of the reason why I recently did this challenge to try to learn Mandarin, because I'm so bad at learning and speaking other languages, that I figured, all right, I got to just jump into this and do this as a challenge, and I want to be able to talk to the members of Priscilla's family who, like your grandmother, who don't speak English. It was actually one of the most heartwarming memories for me is on the morning of our wedding. We had this surprise wedding because we didn't want to have it be this big thing that was planned out in advance, and her grandmother was there, and I told her in Mandarin, I'm like, we're getting married today. And, I'm not that good at the language, so I never know if anyone actually understands what I'm saying, but just a tear rolled down her face, and I was just like, all right, she got it. Good. But, that has always been the hardest thing for me, and I think to this day, I think I can speak Mandarin okay. I think I may be overstating that, but I can express many of the things that I want, and I will get criticized for my tone. I think is fair, but my listening is still not that great. Now, what Priscilla will tell you is that my listening is not very good in English either.
Consistency.
So she says it's not actually a Chinese problem. But that was definitely it for me. I mean, I've tried to study all these different languages over time, and a lot of the reason why I dove into this Mandarin challenge is to try to learn something and get good at something that has always been a challenge for me for a couple of decades at this point.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and I agree again that Beast Hair is awesome, and we have a lot of work to do here in terms of supporting teachers and helping students learn around the world. I think this is going to be a very long-term effort, right? So, building an initiative around personalized learning or working in underserved communities isn't the type of thing that you can make a huge difference on in a year or two, but our goal is to plant the seeds now and invest in building these communities and supporting great teachers and education entrepreneurs and folks all around the world with this view that if we start now, then maybe in 10 or 15 years, when our children are growing up and the next generation after that, then the system that they all learn and can be much, much better than what we've all grown up with today. So thank you guys all for tuning in. We will be excited to continue sharing our work with you. If you want to learn more about it, you should like the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative page, and we'll send out more updates on that.
And
all right.
Welcome, Jim.
Welcome. We're excited.
Me too. Me too.
All right. See you guys.